Johnny Talks Sports here with the Week 1 NFL predictions. We have finally reached the 2020 NFL season. I'm looking forward to it. There were some times where I had my doubts on whether or not we were going to have the NFL season or not. But we are having it, and it is something to be happy about. So let's get right into the Week 1 NFL predictions. As always, we start off with the Thursday night football game, the season opener between the Houston Texans and the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this is going to be one of the two games this week that will have some sort of fan attendance. The Chiefs will have 22% fan attendance for this matchup. Now, the Texans beat the Chiefs in the regular season last year. However, the Chiefs ended up winning in the divisional round in the playoffs when it matters. Let's also not forget that the Texans had a 24-0 lead in the division round last year, and everything was going great for the Texans until that fake punt they decided to run in the second quarter, which I can see why they wanted to do it, because you had a 24-0 lead. You really wanted to kind of really put the Chiefs really in a very tough spot, because it was still a 3-possession game at that time. And with an offense like the Chiefs, even with a 3-possession lead, you don't feel comfortable punting to them. You have to take risks if you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, which I can understand why they did it. At first, I was thinking, well, that was a dumb move for them to do. But now that after I saw that game in particular, and throughout the entire rest of the postseason, it makes sense why they did it. But it just didn't work out. And the Chiefs ended up ultimately scoring 51 points and dominating the rest of that game. So the Texans, they also lost. Well, didn't lose. They traded DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason, but they did acquire David Johnson, and they also acquired Brandon Cooks from the Rams in the offseason as well. And right away, those two X factors of David Johnson and Brandon Cooks, those two have to perform if the Texans want to have a fighting chance of beating the Chiefs. And in all honesty, I already think the Texans have a fighting chance against the Chiefs. This could be still a Super Bowl hangover for the Chiefs. Let's remember, David Johnson 2 years ago, when he was with the Cardinals, had a good statistical performance against the Chiefs. And Brandon Cooks against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football a couple seasons ago with the Rams. He had 8 catches for 107 yards, being the leading receiver that night in that offensive shootout. So I think if those two step up, I think the Texans have a really good chance of winning that game. But I ultimately think the Chiefs, it's just hard to pick against the Chiefs with what they're capable of on offense, and their defense has shown massive improvements over the years. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what the experts are anticipating. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win. I'm going to say by only 7. I think the Texans, they hang in there from start to finish, but I just think the Chiefs, offensively in the end, will prevail. Next, we have the Seattle Seahawks and the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons, their defense was really abysmal last year. And I think it's going to be really a field day for Russell Wilson and that Seahawks offense. The Falcons didn't really make much improvements as far as the defense is concerned. I felt like A.J. Terrell in that first round was a reach. And they also let Desmond Trufant leave in free agency, released Devontae Freeman. They let Austin Hooper sign with the Browns. So much was lost from that Falcons team that at least some of those talented players are now gone for the Falcons. And I think this is going to be really a miserable year for the Atlanta Falcons, and this is possibly going to be the last season that Dan Quinn will be the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, unless the Falcons, they can pull off an 11-5 or a 12-4 type season. I just can't see Dan Quinn remaining on the sidelines for the Falcons after 2020. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson, a dark horse candidate for MVP. I'd say he's probably maybe third in line between Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And this is going to be, I think this is going to be a good day for him. I think his receivers are going to have their way with these Falcons corners. And I think the Seahawks, I think it could be a little bit closer than anticipated. I think the Falcons have enough talent on offense, at least, with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, to at least stay in the game, even Calvin Ridley, for as much as they can. But unfortunately, I just think the Seahawks win this game in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to take Seattle in this matchup. Next, we have the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are coming off a heartbreaking loss in the wild card round last year in the playoffs. You know, the Jets, it's another year under Adam Gase. And as far as I'm concerned, Adam Gase is on the hot seat right now. I think the Bills, they seem like the favorite to win the AFC East. And I think they win this game pretty handily. I do think the Jets are going to struggle again this year. So I'm going to take the Bills in this matchup. I think that Josh Allen is going to have a really great game. And the Jets also traded away Jamal Adams to the Seahawks in the offseason. And I expect Stephon Diggs to have a huge game for the Bills this Sunday. Next, we have the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. The Chicago Bears, they acquired Nick Foles in the offseason, but it's going to be Mitch Trubisky getting the start in this Week 1 matchup. So a huge question seems to be, will Nick Foles see action in this game, whether it's in the second half or if he's going to play at all at some point in the season? Although I do feel like this is kind of a little bit of a guilt trip for the Chicago Bears, considering with what they gave up just to get Mitch Trubisky. They feel guilty, and they feel like if they start Nick Foles in Week 1, it could be like pretty much all they did to get Mitch Trubisky is all for nothing. I think that's the only reason why he's starting right now, is to hide the fact that the Bears are guilt-tripping themselves. I think that Trubisky is going to have probably a mediocre performance, but fortunately for the Bears, they still have a decent defense, although it wasn't as dominant in 2019 as it was in 2018, which is mainly because of Vic Fangio taking the Broncos job and Chuck Pagano. He is not Vic Fangio. I think the Bears win this, and I think it's probably going to be one of the lower scoring games of the week. Although this is one of the games I had this week where I was kind of back and forth on. This is one of, I think, about the three that I'm just not so sure of, because I think the Lions could win depending on if Trubisky plays as bad as I'm thinking he's going to play. The Bears always seem to beat the Lions in a very close game, and I think that's going to apply here as well. I think the Bears win by 3 points. I think the Bears defense makes a stop in the fourth quarter, probably an interception late in the game to seal the game up for the Bears. So I'm going to take Chicago in this matchup. Next, we have the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. The Packers finally won in Minnesota on Monday Night Football in Week 16 last year. The Vikings offensive line, still some concerns. And the Packers, they seem to do a little bit better this past season, at least defensively. Holding the Chicago Bears only 3 points in the season opener, that was a huge confidence for them. Aaron Rodgers, still the quarterback for the Packers, and as long as the Packers have Aaron Rodgers, they are in Super Bowl contention. Although I just don't like the way the Packers drafted. I did like the first round pick of quarterback Jordan Love, which is understandable because if they would have passed on him and taken someone else, I just don't think Jordan Love would have been there, and they would have had to settle for someone like maybe a Jacob Eason, or they even could have taken a Jalen Hurts maybe in round 2. But I think it's going to be a good pick long term for the Packers. Jordan Love can learn under Aaron Rodgers, but they didn't seem to really focus on the draft as far as what they were focusing on for right now, because considering they're coming off an NFC Championship game appearance, They just seem to make investments for the future and not really right now, which is not bad to focus on the future, but you have to also work on improving now. I don't think the Packers really did that well as far as going through that kind of process. But I still think the Packers will win this game because Kirk Cousins is really inconsistent, and the Vikings, I feel like, are inconsistent as a whole. So I will pick Green Bay to win this matchup. I think Aaron Jones is going to have a dominant performance against this Vikings team again, just like he did in Week 16 last season. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. Cam Newton has been named the starter for the Patriots in this game. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, I'm really not sure if it's official yet, but I'm highly anticipating that Tua Tagovailoa will be the starting quarterback for the Dolphins, although things could change. But if it really is going to be Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback for the Dolphins, I think the main goal for him is to kind of throw some short passes in the beginning of the game to kind of get some confidence. I would say the same thing for the Patriots. Just do what you did with Tom Brady, do the dip and dunk to get Cam Newton that confidence moving forward in the game. So I anticipate this game being very low scoring. I think the Patriots defense is going to be able to do enough to win this game. Even if Cam really struggles, if he were to throw like maybe 4 interceptions in the game, I think the Patriots defense is capable of doing enough to win this game. And I ultimately think the Patriots will win this game in a low-scoring one, 17-16. I think it's going to be that close of a game because usually Week 1, a lot of these games are closer than expected. We see a lot of these teams that come out as what are undoubtedly the underdogs, and they overperform. So I'm going to take the Patriots by a point. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington football team, which really feels different to say. But this is a divisional round to start the season, and you got to remember, once these two teams face off, the Eagles, they seem to struggle in the beginning of the game. Usually, as history shows, the Eagles, they tend to struggle in the first half of their season openers, which is quite common for a lot of teams. But I think the Eagles do this a lot. I see the Washington football team being led by Dwayne Haskins going off on a fantastic start to the game. But unfortunately, I think the Eagles are a second half team in this kind of matchup. I'm going to take the Eagles winning in the second half. Not in a blowout at all. I think the Eagles win this game by a touchdown. I don't think it's going to look very pretty as far as the scoreboard's concerned, but I think it's going to kind of look really good as far as being able to win games is concerned. And there's also some question marks as far as the running back position is for the Washington football team. They released Darius Geis in the offseason. They released Adrian Peterson earlier this week. So right now, its signs seem to be pointing to Antonio Gibson, the rookie, and Bryce Love as the running production for the Washington football team. But anyways, I am picking the Eagles in this matchup. We'll see if the Washington football team is able to hang in there for most of the game, if not the entire game. We'll see what is happening with the running back position for the Washington football team on Sunday. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders and the Carolina Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater will be starting for the Panthers in this game after going undefeated as a backup to Drew Brees when he missed some time for his hand injury. And the Las Vegas Raiders, still some question marks as who's going to start at quarterback, whether it's Marcus Mariota or it's going to be Derek Carr. But either way, I think that the recency bias in me is going with the Carolina Panthers in this matchup. I just like what I see out of Teddy Bridgewater. I really want him to take advantage of this second chance he's getting. I feel like he proved himself last year in relief for Drew Brees. I'm really not sure who to pick in this matchup, but I'm picking Carolina because I'm just not sure what's going to happen at quarterback between Mariota or Derek Carr. Next, we have the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the second game of the only two games that will have some sort of fan attendance. For the Jaguars, it will be 25% capacity. Now, this is the Colts' debut for Phillip Rivers, and I do like what the Colts did in the NFL draft by drafting Michael Pittman in the second round and by also drafting Jonathan Taylor in the second round as well. I think the Colts, these are two offensive weapons that will be used in the offense this season. I could see Michael Pittman being a dark horse for Rookie of the Year. And I think this is kind of what they needed. The Colts, I think they need veteran leadership, and that is what they're going to have in Phillip Rivers. Now, whether or not the Colts are going to move on from quarterback, whether or not they're going to give Jacob Eason the nod in 2021, or if there's an opportunity for them to draft one of these quarterbacks in the college football draft class, whether they have an opportunity, maybe not for Trevor Lawrence, but maybe Justin Fields, maybe not Justin Fields either, but maybe a Brock Purdy out of Iowa State, maybe a Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. Either way, I think the Colts are set up for long-term success, because a smarter thing could be to let Jacob Eason learn for one season under Phillip Rivers, maybe give him the nod in 2021. I think the Colts win this game. I'm just not sure what to look for with this Jaguars team. It appears that the Jaguars, they could be trying to tank for the number one pick, probably Trevor Lawrence, or even a top 3 pick and trying to get Justin Fields. Because I'm pretty sure that Gardner Minshew is not going to be the long-term answer at quarterback for the Jaguars. If you think about what they've done in this offseason already, they have traded Yannick Ngakoue to the Vikings, and they released Leonard Fournette earlier in the week. So they're losing a lot of these. Well, they're not really losing, but they're just giving up these players, these talented players on the roster that ultimately led them to the AFC Championship game just a few seasons ago. The Jaguars, they are just fighting to get back to relevance. So I'm going to pick the Colts in this matchup. Next, we have the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is coming off an MVP season, being awarded the league MVP. Meanwhile, the Browns, there is a lot of things to still prove. Because last year, we all thought that the Browns could make the playoffs with Freddie Kitchens making Baker Mayfield what looked like to be a better quarterback. And they ultimately signed Odell Beckham in the offseason. But this Browns team, they did beat Lamar Jackson early in the season last year. And could the Browns do it again? Yes, I easily think so. But I just think Lamar Jackson, I think he's hungry. He's hungry to get to that next level. And that next level is actually winning a playoff game. So I think Lamar Jackson is very motivated this season. And he definitely wants to really get over that next step. He wants to win a playoff game because everybody's doubting him right now. Both these teams have something to prove. Can the Browns make the playoffs this season? With the expanded NFL playoffs, I think they probably could. But I just don't think Cleveland is back yet. I'm just not sold on this Browns team. Maybe if the Browns started the season maybe like 6-2, or maybe if they were to maybe start off the season on a 3 or 4 game winning streak, maybe I could start to buy the Browns hype. But I just can't right now because they haven't done anything for me to believe that they're capable of making the playoffs. So I'm taking the Ravens. Next, we have the Los Angeles Chargers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow has officially been named the starter for this game against the Chargers. And the Chargers, we are unsure whether it's going to be Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert starting for the Chargers. Although Anthony Lynn did say before the draft that Tyrod Taylor was QB1 going into the season. Although maybe this could change. But if it is Justin Herbert, this is a great matchup we have. 2 rookie quarterbacks looking to show off in their first game. I think we could see Justin Herbert in this game at some point. Although it could seem unlikely, but as far as the goals for these quarterbacks, no matter who it is, just get short intermediate throws to kind of build confidence. I could see a lot of these teams going with these short intermediate passes early on in the games this week because it's been a long time since they've been on the field. I also think for the Bengals, we're going to see a lot of Joe Mixon in the passing game, considering LSU used Clyde Edwards-Helaire a lot in the LSU passing game last year. But I'm going to pick the Chargers in this game because I like the defense for the Chargers in this game. I think that they're going to easily get to Joe Burrow in this game, led by Joey Bosa. And I anticipate the Chargers winning this matchup, although I'm very excited to see how Joe Burrow does in his NFL debut. Next, we have what I think is the game of the week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. The first NFL action for Tom Brady, not in a Patriots uniform. And what a better way to start off his Buccaneers career against Drew Brees, probably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time that isn't Tom Brady. You got two of the better quarterbacks in the league. You could have asked for a better matchup. But this is an element that I see. I think there's going to be an offensive shootout. But when it matters, I think Tom Brady will come through. And a lot of these NFL teams, the Saints are one of them, that uses the crowd advantage for their home games. They feed off the crowd's energy. And they don't have that. Just like 13 other home teams this week aren't going to have that luxury of having the crowd noise, of having crowds. And I think the Buccaneers win this in a shootout. I'm going to say 49-45. I think it's going to be that high scoring of a game. This game is going to be very exciting. And I think this is going to be a big year for the Buccaneers. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are coming off the heartbreak in Super Bowl 54 against the Chiefs. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, what an offseason they're having. They traded for DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. They got what I think is a steal in Isaiah Simmons with the 8th pick in the draft. Now, Isaiah Simmons is someone that can play anywhere on defense. So I think he's a huge X factor, not only for the Cardinals in this game, but for the Cardinals as their season in a whole and long term. However, when you look at what the 49ers have lost in the offseason, they've lost some key pieces to that Super Bowl team. But they still have some big, valuable pieces of that team. Considering that the 49ers, they got there mainly because of defense and their running game. And Jimmy Garoppolo did really well last season statistically, but he didn't really do that well once it mattered. He was pretty much carried by the running game in the NFC Championship game, and he didn't do that well in the Super Bowl. But I think the 49ers win this game. I think it's going to be a very close game. This could be one of these upsets that take place in week one. I see the Cardinals will be winning this game. But I think there's too many pieces that are still there from last year's Super Bowl team on the 49ers. So I'm going to pick San Francisco. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. Sunday Night Football. And this is going to be a showdown, I think. But I am going to pick the Cowboys in this matchup. I think that this is a year for Dak Prescott to prove himself. This is kind of a season that Dak Prescott needs to perform, because all of this talk about him being deserving or undeserving of a big contract, this year's got to prove himself. And with the Rams not having Todd Gurley anymore at running back, losing Brandon Cooks, I think losing these pieces on offense for the Rams, I think it's going to hurt them in this game, and it's going to take them a few weeks to figure out the offense again. Their defense is still a solid one, though. But I'm going to pick the Cowboys in this matchup. I just think with the Rams not having fans, I think the Cowboys are going to find this game very successful for them. I'm very excited to see CeeDee Lamb, the first-round pick out of Oklahoma. I think CeeDee Lamb has a pretty decent showing in his Cowboys debut. And I also like the receiving core for the Cowboys as a whole over this Rams secondary. Our first of two Monday Night Football matchups this week, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Giants. Now, this was another game that I was kind of conflicted on. I think the Giants have a real fighting chance of winning this game. But the way I see it, Ben Roethlisberger, the experience, although he did miss most of last season, I still think there is some weapons on offense. Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner. I think that the Steelers' offense is going to do just enough in this game to beat the Giants. Now, Daniel Jones, he showed a lot of promise last season, and Saquon Barkley did as well. Saquon Barkley has shown a lot of promise as well, and I do like the pick they made in Andrew Thomas in the draft this past April. I think that's what the Giants really need to address. But unfortunately, I just think as far as an offensive line is concerned, I think it's going to take more than just Andrew Thomas to make the offensive line much better for the Giants, which is why I'm going to pick the Steelers in this matchup. I just think the Steelers defense will have an easier time stopping Saquon Barkley and getting to Daniel Jones, forcing him into making bad decisions. There's still that inexperience there for Daniel Jones, and there's still some experience for Ben Roethlisberger. So I'm going to take the Steelers to win this matchup. And our final game of Week 1, the Tennessee Titans versus the Denver Broncos. The Tennessee Titans are coming off an AFC Championship game appearance. Derrick Henry ultimately got hot at the end of the season, while the Broncos, they made some pretty good acquisitions in the offseason. They got Melvin Gordon. They drafted Jerry Jeudy in the first round of the draft, giving Drew Lock some weapons. Now, like I said earlier, there are a couple of upsets tend to happen in Week 1. A lot of these teams, they either underperform in Week 1 or some of them overperform. And I think the Broncos are going to pull off an upset in this matchup. The reason why I think that is because sometimes your best offense is your best defense. And what I mean by the best offense for the Broncos is their best defense. What I mean by that is their running game. Their running game of Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. I think that these two, they're going to most likely probably split carries, though I would say that Melvin Gordon will probably get a little bit more than Phillip Lindsay. But I think they're going to really get to the Titans defense. Even though the Titans, they did sign Jadeveon Clowney, I don't think he would be as much of an impact. I don't think he'd be the major difference in the game as far as the Titans are defensively. But Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, I think they're going to eat the clock up. They're going to take long drives. They're going to keep Derrick Henry on the sidelines. And this is going to be a game where I think whichever team runs the ball the best is going to ultimately win this game. And I know Derrick Henry, he got hot at the end of the season last year. But ultimately, I think the Broncos are going to have another element on their side. And that is the altitude. Especially if the Broncos are on the field for long periods of time. If they take maybe a 7-minute drive in the game, that will tire out the Titans defense. And especially because not very many of them are used to the altitude, or not very many of them have played in Mile High before with the altitude as a factor to worry about. So I think the Broncos will use their running game and the altitude to their advantage. I think the Broncos pull off the upset in this matchup against the Titans. So those are my Week 1 NFL picks. For review, I like the Chiefs, Seahawks, Bills, Bears, Packers, Patriots, Eagles, Panthers, Colts, Ravens, Chargers, Buccaneers, 49ers, Cowboys, Steelers, and Broncos winning this week. Really not much to go off of in Week 1 since it's the first game of the season, and it's really a time where we're trying to see what these teams are made of. Really, the only thing you can really go off of is what you've seen from last year or in the past. So like, share, and subscribe. Comment your picks down below. And I will see you next time.